All right. So to stay, okay, I'm just
We
fascinated.
have a million questions, one of which is, can my dad be one of your clients? But we'll talk about that later.
Hi, I'm Todd Farmer.
And I'm Sam Wright, and this is What Should You Ask? All right, so we're back with our podcast. Finally, we took a little bit of a hiatus. We had a bunch of people that we had to help in our law practice that we've got.
Have to work occasionally.
Yeah. And so now we're back. And there's no better way to come back than a podcast talking about dating the second time around, right?
That will get everyone's attention.
All right, so here's my disclaimer. I love my wife. I'm happily married for 14 years.
Me too.
And so we are going to talk about dating. We are not contemplating having to date the second time around. It's just the subject of our podcast. If you remember, Todd, what was your worst date? Do you remember?
I do. I think I was a junior in college, and we were having a date party.
What's a date party?
Well, if you're in a fraternity, you have a fraternity sorority date party, whatever. And I got set up with this girl. And look, I talk for a living. I have always been able to talk to people. And literally, I think the girl that I went with, I don't know. She didn't say 10 words.
Well, maybe it's because you talked her under the table.
But I mean, look, I've had dates, it isn't going to work out, but we could still have a conversation. I'd tell my standard jokes that I tell. But it was awful. It was like pulling teeth.
So that was a quick no, right? The next question, do you remember your first date with your spouse? Who asked who out? What did you do?
I was working in a law firm in Lexington for a really successful personal injury attorney named Pete Perlman, and his daughter was an attorney, and she did a weekly legal call-in show on the NBC station, and my wife was one of the, I don't know if she was she was just a reporter. She was a reporter for the NBC station, and she set us up, and we went to Keeneland for the day, for the track.
Oh, that's good. So did you all, bet a lot of money? Are you a horse bettor, or were you back then?
I do it for entertainment. I'm not naive enough to think I really understand it, but, we just had fun with it.
So Ashley and I remember where we went on our first date, but we knew each other all the way back from middle school, and actually used to go on spring break. My family and another close family would go on spring break together. So when we were in middle school, we used to go to spring break together to the same place. But we were just friends. And a friend of mine had a wedding reception, and she was there, and she was on me like white on rice.
So how old were you?
How old was I? 20. I don't know. We got married when I was probably 25.
Oh, okay.
How old were you when you first dated Suzanne?
24.
Yeah. And I got married when I was almost a month before my 30th birthday.
I may have been 24. We got married, I was 25 and a half, 26,
Boy,
something like that.
You didn't let that get away, did you? That was quick.
What I find really interesting is how different it is today versus 20 years ago, how direct and how people would, I guess as you get older, we all lose our filters, but people will just say anything on a date that I would never have said if I was a single person, or, just the craziness that's that single scene.
Yeah. I mean, what's new to me is the whole app thing, the dating app thing. I mean, I didn't have that.
Why can't you just go to a good bar like people used to, right?
We're going to take a quiz on some modern dating terms. Okay, so the first one is catfishing. We know that one.
Unfortunately, we know about that. We've had a number of, in our practice, we've had a number of widows that have met people online and have really been scammed. Well, that's really, where someone, I guess you'd say that's where someone goes in and impersonates someone else that they're really not.
Absolutely, yeah.
What about ghosting?
That's easy. Yeah, I ghost my wife and kids where I vanish. No, I don't ghost my wife and kids, but yeah, I know that term. What else? Whelming, not to be confused with whelping. Whelming. Whelming means someone you matched with brags about how many matches they get online to inflate their demand and appeal. Whelming.
So they're trying to build their
Is that short?
brand. Is that what they're trying to do? Essentially build their brand?
Yeah. The next one is orbiting. Have you heard of that, Todd?
Is that like stalking? When you like follow someone around at a bunch of different platforms?
I
Is that
noticed
what
that
is?
level 5 clinger is not on here. And then pocketed. That's where you started. You know what that is?
No.
Started seeing somebody, but they haven't introduced you yet to your family or friends. That's called...
What is that called?
That's called I'm not certain this is going to continue, so I don't want to fully commit. That's what that means.
That's called the old toe in the water, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, when Ashley and I started dating, I was like, hey, everybody, meet out. I was trying to get her locked in.
And this is Ashley. We're moving in together next week.
So today on What Should You Ask, we've got a dating and relationship coach and published author, Elizabeth Lewis. She'll talk with us about dating, including if you're dating after a divorce, separation, or losing a spouse.
Maybe she can give us some tips on navigating the online dating world. We will cover these topics and even more, so make sure you stick around for What Should You Ask?
What Should You Ask is more than just the name of a podcast. It's something you should say to yourself whenever you need legal advice. The attorneys at Farmer & Wright can tell you exactly what you should ask. With over 55 years of combined legal experience, they can guide you through the legal nightmares you can face following an accident, questioning the other driver and their insurance, and how to financially recover from an accident. Farmer & Wright know the answers and can get you results. Visit Farmer Wright, that's right with a W.com, to get a free copy of their book, Finding Help When You Are Injured. Farmer & Wright, helping you know what should you ask.
All right, welcome back. I'm Todd Farmer.
And I'm Sam Wright. Thanks for joining us on What Should You Ask?
Today we have dating and relationship coach Elizabeth Lewis with us. She's the founder of Love and Laughter Life Coaching. And, Sam, as I saw that we were doing this with her today, and this just brought up a myriad of questions,
Oh, yeah. This is going to be great. So, Elizabeth, I think that you're the author of First Date, Next Mate. Also, I think you've written a book called How You Can Find Love Again, as well as Love is on the Way. And I think that might be a dating log book. Is that right?
Yeah, that's just a log. But the first two are like content books. The other one is kind of a fill out as you go.
Well, so I wonder, are there columns and check
boxes? Is there
boxes?
like a grading scale? Like they get so many points?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll explain it more as you want to know.
Awesome. So I think, and so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've met over 360 men online and offline after becoming a widow. And now I think you coach those trying to find love the second or maybe even the third or fourth time around, right?
That is correct. That's the majority of my clientele. I guess God kept me single a lot longer than I wanted to learn all the lessons and to save people some time to not, make the same one. So
I always find it fascinating how people got into their careers. So how did you end up here? Let me say it that way.
Okay. So I am a retired school teacher, actually. And as I was teaching, my husband died on 9/11 when my kids were 9 and 11. So they were very young. I obviously did not date right away because I had to be a mom. But as I did start dating, I accidentally founded the largest singles group in Louisville. And it was an accident because I was only going to have one gathering, but it was so popular that everyone was like, oh my gosh, you've got to do this again. I'm like, okay. I was a teacher. I was off all summer, did it again. And it's grown to over 3,500 people. So, and most of them are next time arounders. So like divorced, widowed, maybe a little older, not married yet. So I organized that group. And so as I was still teaching, I was always in conversations about dating, telling my girlfriends, don't sleep with them on the first date, just like what I thought was common sense stuff. And when I retired from teaching and went into life coaching, they like you to pick a niche, something like you're passionate about or you know a lot about. And so I picked relationships.
Who is your typical client?
Okay. Well, as a life coach, really anybody could be a client, anybody ready to move forward in life. So someone that's done with therapy, done with working at your mom and daddy issues, and you're ready to move forward, I can have anyone as a life coach. But as my niche of relationships, the vast majority of my clients are next time around single. So they're divorced, widowed, maybe a little bit older, struggling with online dating, offline dating. They can't seem, where's all the good guys, all those negative paradigms out there. I also can coach somebody that's like engaged and making sure they're good and ready to be married. And then, I can.
Have you ever coached somebody who is engaged and you were like, this is not a good fit?
Luckily, I have not. I've not done as many of those. There's a quiz I give called the SYMBIS, Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. And it's like this test that they take, and it gives me this 15-page report that I kind of help unpack with them. The last couple that I had that I coached, they're both widows. They were going way too fast. They were talking about marriage after, 2 weeks. And I was just wanting to slow them down, slow down. And so we did the test and we talked about the value of waiting. So,
Todd, go ahead.
We just have a number of, I'm in my early 50s and Sam's not younger than me. And so we have a bunch of friends that are in these situations, and it's a kind of a comic relief, the stories that we hear. But one question I've got, so what's the biggest mistake that people make when they're dating?
So, well, first of all, you're having all these people come to mind. Your listeners are probably saying the same thing, like, oh my gosh, my mom, my best friend's, husband passed and whatever. And they're swimming around in the dating world going, what the heck? Like, it's so different than it was when I was 20 and now I'm 55. And so send them to me, number one. And number two, the book, First Date, Next Mate, the subtitle is called Perspectives in Dating the Next Time Around. It covers a ton of perspectives and things that everyone should know before they jump into the dating world. I think the number one mistake that next time around singles do is they have sex too early.
I was going to say that a little differently. I was going to say the number one mistake people make is they rush into a relationship too early. I can't tell you how many friends that I've known who've gotten divorced, and within 30 or 60 days, they've met somebody and they're talking about moving in together and getting married again. And I'm like,
out of the frying pan into the fire. Yeah. We may be going out of order, but tell us about these apps. What are your thoughts about all these dating apps? When I was dating, they had rotary phones when Todd was dating, but when I was dating, they didn't have apps. So tell us about.
We had the mall and the Dairy Queen when I was dating, right? That's what we had.
Yeah.
Tell us, do you recommend folks using dating apps?
I am a huge proponent for online dating.
Okay.
So I met my husband there. He lived 2 hours away. We're both widows. We just married 4 months ago. I'm a huge proponent, but there's some do's and don'ts and pros and cons, all of which, again, I've put in my book, First Date, Next Mate, to help navigate. Even if they don't hire me as a coach, they can navigate through reading the do's and don'ts and the pros and the cons. Now, are there people in there that are not authentic? Are there people that want sex only? Are there people that, yes, but you can go to the Dairy Queen in the mall and find those same people. So it's not an online dating issue. It's a human behavior issue. Like, if people are going to lie online about their age or whatever, they're going to lie to you in person, So online dating gets a bad rap because there are people that lie about their age and their body type. Usually those are the two main things people will lie about.
No.
And then you meet in person and you go, oh my gosh, your picture was 10 years ago. And so then people go, online dating's not for me. But all that same person you can meet at church. Well, so what
do you tell your clients? Like, hey, if you're going to get online and do dating and they have this profile picture, you need to have them send a current picture, or you need to FaceTime with them or something before you go on a date?
Well, there's a ton of things. So yes to all of those. I would cut to the chase and ask things like, are your pictures current? So obviously, if they've already lied about their pictures, And if they're going to lie to me again, they have zero chance after we have a cup of coffee, right? Because you've lied now twice. But if they go, well, actually, I don't have any up-to-date pictures, I'll say, well, flip your phone around, take a selfie, and send it to me. I mean, there's ways.
But nobody's going to do. I mean, people are going to like hold the phone, put the, you've seen how these kids do like their Instagram pictures or whatever it is, to where they, I mean,
in my days, it was called the glamour shots.
Yes.
Well, it's legitimately straight up who you're going to meet for a cup of coffee. So,
That's true.
I mean, yes, absolutely. So, but I navigate. I mean, I tell people, have good pictures. Don't glamour shot them. We don't walk around airbrushed. Be real, but have them be good pictures. Like You need a headshot, smiling, showing your teeth.
You've mentioned a cup of coffee a few times. Is that what do you recommend for like the actual first date?
The intro.
Yeah. Is it not go to their house for a evening dinner or anything like that?
You got it. So I call it a meet and greet. Just some people call it a go see, go see if you like them. I call it a meet and greet. I say cup of coffee, something that lasts under an hour, quick getaway. If there's no attraction, but if there is attraction, still leave after an hour, leave them wanting more, leave them wanting to ask you out. So don't have we had this great conversation. We stayed for 5 hours. Well, still leave after an hour.
Can your clients typically tell if they're attracted to somebody within like the first 2 minutes of seeing and conversation?
Absolutely. Can't you?
I mean, isn't it just kind of candid to say after 2 minutes, look, I know you're really busy. I'm really busy. I'm just not feeling this. Let me buy the coffee and then leave.
You are so rude.
That's a great
2 minutes.
Let me speak my truth.
So that's a great question. And so so my answer would be go for the hour cup or 30 minutes or hour, have a conversation, because the learning is in the dating.
So second time arounders frequently have children. So like, what's that integration? Do you bring the kid to coffee? Do you bring your kid to coffee with them and give them an iPad while you're chatting?
No. And that really is not a one size fits all, because obviously if the kids are younger, if they're teenagers, if they're adult children, but no, the answer is never bring them to the meet and greet, because they're not there to meet your kids. They're there to meet you. If over time that person becomes significant, which means you all are moving forward and you've been going out for a few months and not just like wanting to move in after 2 weeks, then it really is age dependent on how you present that to the kids. So I don't want to go through all those scenarios, but if I was working with a client, we would go through that scenarios. Is it a divorce situation? Are you a widow? Are you, what's your purpose in dating? Is your purpose in dating just to get your feet wet? Well, don't introduce them to anybody.
Right.
Is your purpose, are you marriage minded? Make sure it's for the right, so when I first started dating, I wanted to find a stepdad for my kids. Wrong reason to be dating. They were 9 and 11. I guess they were actually 12 and 14 when I started dating, but that's not the right reason to be dating. So it's really a conversation that I would have actually with the client about how to integrate the kids. Of course, you have to bring them along, but a 5-year-old has to be brought along differently than like a 15-year-old or a 25-year-old.
Is that one of your most challenging characteristics of a client? Is that you've got to work on integrating kids?
I would say the most challenging thing with the client is mindset, their beliefs, their saboteurs. I call them blockers. I call them, I'm too old. I'm too fat. Who will ever love me again? My husband cheated on me. I don't trust men. And they've got all this kind of like heavy baggage. But I mean, they just have a belief. Most of the beliefs that people have are not even true. So if they have a belief that, for example, I use this one when I speak, I say, so let's say somebody says, I just seem to attract all the narcissistic men. Like, why do I have to meet all the narcissistic ones, right? So because let's say it's a woman, because that woman has a belief, the next time they go out, they're going to be like, see, I told you I attract all the narcissistic men. They're going to look for proof that belief is true. And it's not even true, but it's a belief that's true. So that's the lens in which they look. That is my biggest challenge working with clients, is having them get out of that, believing things that are not true, know what's true about you and what you're looking for, and then navigating them through that.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, author Elizabeth Lewis will discuss how to get back into the dating scene and how to set up an online profile to get a swipe right. This is What Should You Ask?
Bankruptcy is a nightmare to go through. What should you ask? Well, that's why Farmer and Wright are a sponsor of What Should You Ask? Because that's one of the toughest questions you'll face. How do you answer those credit calls? What do you do when you're faced with innumerable bills and debt collectors breathing down your neck? Farmer and Wright can help answer those questions. If you're listening to their What Should You Ask podcast, you've heard a lot of great advice already, but it may be time to get them involved in your case. Get a fresh start and find out what you should ask at Farmer Wright, that's Wright with a W.com.
Welcome back. I'm Todd Farmer.
And I'm Sam Wright. Today we have a dating and relationship coach, Elizabeth Lewis. She's the founder of Love and Laughter Life Coaching. So thanks for joining us on What Should You Ask?
So tell me about the book, How Can You Find Love Again Like I Did? Tell us about that book and what brought that book on.
Okay, so I was single for 15 years before I met my now husband online. And in those 15 years, of course, I wrote The First Date Next Mate first. But then when I met David, people were always asking, how did you find someone so awesome? How did you, he was 2 hours away. And all the things that I've learned in 15 years about being ready for loving again, all the different mindsets that I've learned about, I put them all in one book. It's a very short read. And so I just talked about all the different things that I did, from a dating journal to, I talk about what we just talked about, how you have a belief that isn't even true. There's something in our brain called your RAS, R-A-S, let's see, what's it called? Reticular activation system. So if you believe a belief that's not true, you're going to look for proof of that to validate that belief. And so I talk a little bit about that.
What would your advice be for someone? How do they get started? If they think they're ready to go back into the dating world, how would they get started? Okay.
Aside from reading my book and hiring me, which of course, the book is probably the most beneficial. I've read 55 dating books and kind of put everything I learned in one book. So maybe learning a little bit about it, rediscovering kind of who you are. Like, people say, well, how do you know when you're ready to go back, right? And so I know in my book I listed 10 things. I won't go through all of them, but rediscovering who you are as a single person. Maybe your husband hated to do your favorite hobby, and you can now get to do your favorite hobby again, and that is a new way to meet people. If you're a widow, maybe all of your guilty feelings are gone. So like, if you go out on a date too soon and you're thinking, oh my gosh, my husband would be like, I feel it doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm cheating on him. Well, you're probably not ready yet. I would say you've lost, like if your husband cheated or your wife cheated on you, either one, and you're still really bitter and angry and you've got all that festered in, probably not good, because you're going to end up vomiting that on your next person. You just are.
That would be a tough other side of the dinner table.
A short cup of coffee.
Yes.
And then, you'll be excited about dating again. You won't be like, oh my God. I mean, you obviously need to heal first. And then once you heal.
So let me ask you this. Isn't some level of readiness and excitement dependent on who you meet? Because like, if you meet a bunch of people that you're not into, you're thinking, oh, this was a bad idea, I shouldn't have started doing this, versus you find somebody that you think is incredibly attractive. Yeah. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah. Well, so they're still learning. So there's a thing called a rebound relationship. And it's a thing. I had one. It's basically the first person you fall in love with after your divorce or the death of your spouse. And the reason is, like, it's been so many years since you've felt love and someone touched you or kissed you or whatever, and you've got all these feelings like, oh my gosh, and you fall crazy in love too fast. And you find out over time, well, they are not my one. But
Is that typically, I'm curious, is that typically men or women?
That are scooping up the rebound
Or that jump into the rebound relationship? Because I know a bunch of men that when they're single, it's like they cannot take care of themselves unless they have a woman in their life. They can't even wash their own clothes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say it's both. I waited 3 years to date, but the first one I fell in love with, it had been 3 years since I held anybody's hand or had a man in my life. And I was like, oh my God, he's the one. I know he's the one. I'm going to marry him. And after 5 or 6 months, you're like, yeah. You don't see the red flags because you're
only seeing what you want to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say it's both. It's both men and women. Well,
Okay.
It takes two to have a rebound, right? Because,
So tell us about, what does a good online profile look like? Well, first of all,
What are you trying to find out from a profile?
yeah. And do you have a favorite app, like your go-to dating app?
Okay. Well, so you all just asked some really good questions that would take a long time to answer. So I'll try to condense them.
Sure.
There's no way I can go over. My book has all kinds of pros and cons and do's and don'ts. So I'll maybe cover some of the highlights. Well, I think I mentioned before about a profile. You want to have at least 4 pictures. And I picked that number. There's no magic number, but don't have just one and don't have 25. A little overwhelming, but you need a headshot, a body shot, maybe, something that you enjoy doing. You want to show the real you. Okay. Not overshow. You don't want stuff hanging out all over everywhere. And if you do, that's what you'll get. You asked, what's my favorite app? Well, first, let me distinguish for the listeners the difference between an app and an online. So like Match.com they have an app, but it's a paid subscription that you do on the computer.
Okay.
Whereas like Tinder, Bumble, some of those other ones, those are apps only and they're free. So, it's hard to say what's my favorite, because if I'm working with a 35-year-old, my answer might be different than I'm working with a 65 or 75-year-old, because some of them kind of lean toward an older, some kind of lean toward younger. People say, oh, Tinder's just a pickup app. And there's like all kinds of bad things that people say about Tinder. Yeah. But, I was on Tinder at one time. I mean, I'm a nice person. I'm a Christian. I'm a high quality woman. So there's also high quality people there. Right. And it's free.
So let me ask you this. Do you put yourself on numerous dating websites? Like, do you fish with a net?
So I recommend one paid site and 1 or 2 free. So the answer is yes. And people might say, oh, you go online, you see all the same people. Well, guess what? They're looking for love just like you are. Aren't you on all the different ones? I mean, it's not a bad thing.
I don't want to be a member of any club that had me as a member, right?
It's if you're looking for love, you got to go where the singles are. Online dating is not the only way to date. You can still go to church and go to parties. It's not one or, it's both and. Got it. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones out there.
All right. So like, if you said this is the number one red flag when you're dating, what's the number one red flag?
Someone that goes too fast. And I'm not talking just physically, but on the first date, they're wanting you to come to the family reunion the next weekend, or, they're just too fast. That's a red flag. And then everybody has different red flags. If you cuss like a sailor and drink like a sailor, you're not my guy. But there's some people that be like, man, I cuss a lot and I drink a lot. So that's what I'm looking for, So another one would be obviously honesty. If they're honest, and you'd be surprising the number of people that are not. So that's where you give time. Time will expose you or promote you. Time is your friend. You want to see, do they mean what they say and say what they mean over time?
Well, Elizabeth, this has been really interesting. This is, you've really developed a neat niche. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
My website is long, but it's called loveandlaughterlifecoaching.com.
Loveandlaughterlifecoaching.com. Okay.
There's links to my books, my classes, my coaching. It's got my packages. It has everything that I offer is on there.
That's great. Really developed a niche and a market for this.
You know, she's always going to have customers.
Yes,
right?
you will always have business, won't you?
50% of America is divorced. And believe it or not, but the second time round, it's 63% divorce rate. And the third time round is 71%. So the more times you're married, the greater your divorce rate goes up. You would think it'd be the other way around, right? It's not.
If you're hard to get along with the first time, you're not going to get very easier, right? Well, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you to relationship coach Elizabeth Lewis for visiting with us today. We'll provide additional social media links, website, where we can buy your books in our show notes. So thank you for listening.
If you like what you've heard, make sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to where you listen to podcasts. If you loved what you heard, then leave us a review where you listen and tell anybody that we're at whatshouldyoutask.live, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Every Wednesday, we ask, what should you ask about life topics? So make sure you come back to hear about what we're asking.
What Should You Ask is hosted by Todd Farmer and Sam Wright. The producer is Jennifer Caldwell. Visit whatshouldyoutask.live to download additional episodes, suggest a future topic, or get a free book from the host. The information provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as legal advice on any subject matter. You should not act or refrain from acting based on any content mentioned without seeking legal or other professional advice in your area. The hosts, guests, and sponsors remove themselves from all liability for actions you take or fail to take based on any content in this broadcast.